Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Committee of Council meeting, Thursday the 12th of May. My name is Councillor Bruno Petrinas, and the purpose of our meeting today is to hear submissions in respect of the annual budget 22-23. The meeting is being recorded and available on Council's website. It will also be live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. In respect of health and safety requirements, I'll just wait till they come up on the screen. In the event of a fire and emergency and hearing the alarm, please leave the site immediately by the nearest fire exit and very well signposted. We evacuate to the assembly area, the clock tower, Te Marae o Hine, the square. For health and safety, smoking is prohibited within the council public entrance building or site. A defibrillator is located at front of house on the ground floor. And if you have any near misses or incidents, please report that to the committee administrator. While Palmerston North is at COVID-19 protection framework, I'd ask that everybody continues to follow public hygiene measures. All online participants are to keep their cameras turned on and microphones muted unless addressing the meeting. We have a slight challenge on the technology today that for voting we will have to sort of do it by hand, but if there's any questions to be asked, could you please raise your hands as well? I'd like to move the resolution to, do we have any apologies? We have apology from Councillor Leonie Habita for early departure. I'd like to move that be received. Seconded by Councillor Hancock. All those in favour? Any additional items? There being none. Any declarations of interest? I'd move the resolution to note the procedure sheet and ask for somebody to second that. Councillor Hancock. All those in favour, raise their hands. That's excellent. Thank you. And now we move to the hearing of submissions. Our first submitter is Sandy Nimmo from the Memorial Park Sports Trust Board. Welcome, Sandy. You have 10 minutes. I believe you understand the process. I think you've challenged it before. And at 7 minutes, we go to amber. At 9 minutes, we go to red. And then it's all over.
So,
the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody hear? I have a fairly loud voice, but I'll use the microphone. If you have any questions about what we've already submitted, please hold them till the end. Mr. Chairman and members of Council and Mr. Mayor, thank you. In the beginning, 6 years ago, we never imagined that it would take us 6 years to get to where we are now, with many minor and a couple of major steps still to be achieved. Of course, we never imagined the negative impact of COVID, or being locked out by playground development for many, many months, or the resistance to and lack of support, many times from your staff. Your support, Council's support, is helping us toward our vision of a full restoration of the now 70-year-old, that's 70, not 17, 70-year-old rink has been, and I'm sure will never be forgotten. I'd like to also acknowledge that the folks at your archives department have been absolutely amazing, helping us dig up the history of the rink. So if you want to know anything about it over the last 70 years, please feel free to ask. I want also to acknowledge the support and friendliness of your staff person, Jason Pilkington, during the first 3 or 4 years of us trying to move forward. But along the way, we never expected the resistance from some of your staff in them seeing but not understanding the plan, but they usually didn't ask questions. From the early days when I stood on the rink surface, yet to be attacked, with Aaron Phillips, outlining the plan and our vision, to working with Jason, we have not backed away from that plan, and we don't have any plans to do any backing away. During the months when Memorial Park was going through a large transition, when we couldn't do anything, being effectively locked out of the park, can't read my own writing, even though Palmerston North City Council staff, with the usual lack of consultation, was telling the public that the rink was open. We wanted to stay active in some way. We spent almost 3 months of getting no replies to any of our emails, asking questions. We then asked someone to help us, and a meeting was held on site regarding the old caretaker shed that we were about to inherit. The meeting was held. Moving forward with inheriting the shed made sense to us at the time, as there was work going on the shed immediately adjacent to what is now, quote, ours. And we thought it was a suitable time to do things so that all that work could be done at the same time. But seemed to make sense to us. The work to expand the old shed took place, and that, to us, was good news, although it was the beginning of the shockingly bad liaison with Palmerston North City Council staff. We inherited a new liaison person. I think Jason was reassigned or sent to perjury or purgatory or whatever it's called. A really quite positive meeting was held on site with the new person, and then they disappeared for about 5 weeks and didn't leave us anyone to deal with. And that was in our peak season. That was in January, when we could have been running public sessions all the time. We were a bit disappointed and shocked. Even when they returned, we got another period of time with no replies to any emails. And they apparently made a complaint about us, probably targeted at me, and that resulted in rather a disappointing piece of work from a senior staff person. I'm still upset about that. But no one consulted with us in the process of preparing this document. No one talked to us. You know, who are we? Are we just nobodies? Not valuable volunteers, not respected volunteers? We have not replied to the false accusations and absolute untruths in that document, except to consult my lawyer. I'm a business-minded person. I agreed to work with a group of people at community level in Palmerston North to help them develop or redevelop a now 70-year-old facility for the public of Palmerston North and the Manawatu. So I'm blunt at times. I'm very direct, but never rude. Demanding, yes. You already made a reference to my earlier request for more time. So I'll be really short and just put in a few highlights here. We still haven't received a finished copy of our Memorandum of Understanding. The last time we were called to a meeting, I had to drag one of our trustees out of his shop into a meeting, which we thought was going to be the final of the MOU, only to be told at that very meeting that, oh, we've made changes to it just this morning. But it hadn't been shared with us, so we left the meeting not very happy. Where is the draft lease? We keep hearing about the fact that we're going to have to sign a lease, and we haven't seen anything yet. It seems to me, if I spend 30 seconds of paranoia, one begins to wonder whether some of your staff are ganging up against us and don't want a skating rink. We're still waiting for the electrician's report on the power supply that will be needed to cover the lights and the sound system. We asked for access to water, not a supply of water, and we're still waiting. I'm wondering, on a general perspective, do Palmerston North City Council staff have KPIs to meet? I worked for a very large government in Canada called the Ontario government, which services close on 30 million people and has a budget probably in the 100 or 1,000 times bigger than the one you have to worry about. And They developed many years ago a system of KPIs that demanded of staff that voicemail messages or phone messages were to be returned within 48 hours. Emails were to be returned promptly within a week of being received, and various other key performance indicators that they had to meet. I'm amazed that that doesn't seem to exist here, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I have an enormous amount of respect for councils all over, as I've said in the preliminary document, because you've been facing some really tough times lately. And while your staff are definitely looking at new things, because we did notice a few instances where contracts and work orders are handed out, but they're not managed. But I think that staff somewhere are looking at how that is made to happen. We want respect for us as volunteers, as that's as important to us as respecting your staff. I've been accused of not respecting your staff. It's a two-way street, as is communication. If we send an email asking a question, we want an answer. Even if that answer says, sorry, we can't do that. An answer is just common sense, and it's polite. But now I understand that I'm supposed to be drafting an expression of interest for installers. One of the big tasks we have ahead of us is to make sure that all the facts are on the table and an expression of interest goes out to a range of installers that we already have on a supplier list. And I just want to facetiously say, I'm not applying for a job at Palmerston North City Council, and I'm no expert at preparing an expression of interest for something that's to happen on Palmerston North City Council owned land. In my earlier presentation, or part one, said we would love to get some money. We've had hardly any revenue from public sessions because we couldn't provide them. We need understanding. We need for your staff to understand that our knowledge and expertise is quite significant, particularly in the wheeled area. We can't bring schools in to Memorial Park because there's only one bench when we requested 3, because the kids that come, and we're targeting high schools, with support from Sport Manawa too, they need to sit down when they're putting their skates on. On the ground? Probably not. We've had to decline temporarily, hopefully just defer, a previously granted $10,000 from Sport Manawa 2 under their expansion and innovation program that we're working with them on, and we hope that we'll reapply again in November. Done. Look, it's still orange.
Thank you very much, Sandy, and I'm very sorry to hear about your communication difficulties, but no doubt we will address them and respond in due course. I have a question from His Worship the Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Sandy. Good to see you again, and thank you for the work that you're obviously putting in behind the scenes. So just refresh me and perhaps my colleagues, the Memorial Park Sports Trust, is that just roller sports skating, or does it involve other sports?
No, it's an umbrella group for sports that happen when you have wheels on your feet.
Right.
Right? That's a kind of generic way to explain it. We accommodate things like learn to skateboard, so that we have a group that runs weekend sessions where people can come and learn how to use a skateboard properly and safely. We cover inline hockey, the old-fashioned, very old-fashioned roller hockey, yes, every now and then. We cover public sessions. We cover roller derby. Roller derby,
okay. Good. And the whole, so the council's done some work, obviously, resurfacing and
yes, you gave us the money and we managed the contract.
Right, gotcha, okay. And then there's still a further $250,000 to go to finish the project in the trust size.
And that's a bald-faced estimate on my part. The
right,
2 main projects are, one, and we don't have a price for this, is finding out how much the installers are going to charge us for installing the lights and the sound system,
okay,
in a safe and
yep,
unreachable.
Okay. Yep, I understand all that. And then there's also, you're after some seating and some other...
The seating around the old caretaker shed, which is now, quote, ours, is necessary for when classes come. So if we're going to undertake a schools outreach program with money from Sport Manawatu 2,
Understand.
we're going to be getting like 25 to 30 kids at a time.
Yep.
But we need spaces for them to sit. Backless benches, real cheap. Doesn't
Yeah.
have to be fancy.
Yeah, okay, cool. And we've had some trouble, obviously, with connecting with the staff, but in your opinion, we can get through that?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Thanks for the work you're doing. Thank you.
Councillor Vaughan Dennison.
Thank you, Chair. Just around a couple of things, just wanted to understand. So there's frustration with the access to the storage shed that's been extended. Have you got access to that now? Did I understand?
Yes, we do. After the meeting on site, when we said we were being ignored, and I hate being ignored, in that work began almost right away. All that was required was gutting it, essentially, and putting a 2-metre-long extension on it. The plan for that, as some staff have claimed, was done by the staff, and I stand corrected. We did it. We designed what the shed should look like when it was expanded, and we handed that over to everyone that was involved at that time. So it's, we did end up getting it, and it was filthy, and they gutted it really well. So we're in the process of trying to rehabilitate that. We've moved all our skates in because they were initially in the little shed at the top of the grandstand. So they're all there, but we haven't yet been able to find money and time to build shelves so that the skates can be stored in layers so that they're much more accessible. Still a work in progress. We've tried to keep people as informed on that as possible. And yeah, that'll do. Does that help?
Yeah, that's helpful. And the MOU that you said still hasn't been signed, and there were some changes to the lease or whatever. So neither the MOU or the lease is finalised, as I understand
The
it?
memorandum of understanding had a most recent meeting a while back, and that was the meeting at which I asked one of our trustees to close his shop and come to a meeting because we anticipated it to be the final meeting. And as we sat at that meeting, we were advised that the MOU had been changed that very morning. And it takes me 2 hours to get here because I don't live in Palmerston North, for which I, of course, apologize. And so it gets very difficult when we don't have enough funds to do what we would like to do. And I think we have the princely sum of about $1,500 in our bank account, when if we'd have been able to operate somewhat normally, we probably might have been able to double that. We get most of our revenue through grants, and but use them for specific purposes. We got grant money from 3 sources to help us buy all the skates, and we got grant money from Central Energy Trust to pay for the lights and the sound system. Sound system is already paid for and in storage, and the invoice for the lights, because we've now identified that we absolutely have to have motion sensors, is actually sitting on my computer as of this morning.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Did you want to ask a final question, Councillor Harpiter?
My question was about the lighting and asking Eastern Central, because I remembered that question last time, Sandy, so I'm glad that you got that from Eastern Central. That was what my question was, so thanks for letting us know that. Thank you.
That
Thank
was
you.
one of the instances where we ran into when we'd been saying for a long time that we wanted to restore what had been there from the beginning, and we brought you photographs from the 1950s and from 1965, showing clearly that there were lights and a sound system at that time. So in the process of restoration, you want to try and make it look like it did 70 years ago. So we
Thank you,
did
Sandy.
end up getting that cleared and resolved, and we got the money.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The time is now up, and so thank you very much, Sandy, for your submission.
Okay. The guy-
And our next submitter is Malcolm Prince.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Mr. Mayor.
you understand the process in terms of you have 10 minutes for your submission.
Yes,
At 7 minutes, the amber light goes, and red will go at 9 minutes.
9 minutes. Thank you.
Floor is yours.
Mr Mayor and councillors, the proposed rates for the 22-23 year is producing some extremely unfair and inequitable increases for many people, and I'm sure you've heard this before. You could say that I represent a large number of very angry, outraged, and quite frankly, very pissed off ratepayers. Let me be clear, I do not mind paying my fair share of rates in order for the city to function, and I like living here. But I do object to paying exorbitant increases and more than my fair share. Let me give you a few examples. I live at 69 Keeling Street and have done for the past 40 years, in a modest house, in a modest street, in a modest part of town. In the street where I live, in my particular area, there is a mixture of single parents, young families, professional people, and pensioners, both on their own and as couples. I did a few sums using the information available on your website regarding nearby properties to my property, specifically houses number 65 to 73, that's either side of me, including myself, and on the opposite side of the street, numbers 68 to 74. All these properties are facing increases between 20 and nearly 25%. Additionally, a friend of mine in Roy Street, quite away from here, is facing an increase of 30.9%, while a property in Ruapehu Drive, up on the hill, with a value of $1,075,000, which is basically the same land area as mine, is facing a rates decrease of -0.5%. Other properties near me also show a minus figure. Where is the fairness in that? The property up in the Ruapehu Drive I'm referring to has a 2-storey house from memory and is fairly new. I couldn't afford to build it, and yet they get a minus rates increase. There is no fairness in the system. We are all using the same city services, parks, library, roads, etc. I emailed some of my concerns to all you councillors, but only 2 had the courtesy of replying. That was Brent Barrett and Lorna Johnson. None of the rest of you gave me the courtesy of even acknowledging my email. Now, I view the extreme increase in rates on properties like mine as property acquisition by stealth, a means to slowly force people out so developers can subdivide. Also, to me, it seems little thought has been given to the effect of the slow covering of the land with extra roofing in concrete in regards to climate change and increasing extreme weather. Already in Keeling Street, for example, the stormwater system cannot cope with persistent heavy rain, and the street can flood across both footpaths to the fences either side of the street. Properties like mine with trees, shrubs, lawn and garden should be valued for the eco-services they provide and not penalised with a huge percentage increase in rates. I actually find it quite ironic that the Palmerston North City Council, in its latest Palmy Proud magazine, says, and I quote right at the very start, Palmy is a city that plans for and cares about its future. So at the Palmerston North City Council, we are passionate about bringing to life our vision of creating an eco-city. I view that as a bit of greenwashing. There's no mention anywhere of the other side of the coin with problems of infill housing. I do not like just highlighting a problem, but like to offer a solution or a way forward. My proposal to the Palmerston North City Council and you councillors is in the interim to set a general rates increase across the board, that's both residential and commercial properties, of say 6.9% in line with inflation, while a fairer way of setting rates is considered. That would be 6.9% for the next rating year. Other, say, capital valuation, for example, I'm sure you've heard this before. Other cities in New Zealand use the capital value rating system. The present land value rating system is broken. And while I'm about it, does the city really need electric vehicles at tens of thousands more dollars cost than petrol vehicles, along with the charging infrastructure in these constrained times? What about e-bikes? A building inspector going to visit different properties, as far as I know, he has a folder of papers, his laptop. He could certainly put it in a carrier on the back of an e-bike, and further, for inclement weather, why can't the city buy something like New Zealand Post has, where the posties go around delivering in one of those small vehicles? Surely that's much better than tens of thousands of dollars on an electric vehicle, 80 grand, 90 grand. You might get a cheaper rate, I don't know. My challenge to you as elected representatives is to scrap the present system of setting rates and consider other fairer possibilities. Otherwise, I fear it is quite possible this city may face a rates revolt. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts, Malcolm. We have a question from Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Malcolm. Appreciate you coming and speaking to us today and your suggestions. Now, when you talk about the suggestion of applying consistently an increase, consistently across all ratepayers, you suggested a 6.9% increase. I'm just wondering where 6 point.
Yeah, that's the rate of inflation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So would you consider that that would be an acceptable level of increase?
Well, no. Most ratepayers will tell you no level is an acceptable level of increase, but the reality is the city's got to function like everybody else and they're facing increased costs. And I'm sure most people facing a 30% rates increase would be more than happy with a 6.9%.
Okay. Just second question, in order to bring it down to 6.9 or anything less than what it currently is, we would need to make some reductions. Do you have any specific suggestions around things that we could spend less money on?
Electric vehicles I've already mentioned. I'm sure there's other fat in the system. My concern is not finding where the costs can go down. It's spreading the cost of running the city much fairer, in a much fairer way than it is at present.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Next question from His Worship the Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, thanks, Mr. Prince, and look, appreciate that you've taken the time. You wrote to us, you were in the paper, and you're here today. Some of us actually waited. I just checked that if you were doing a submission, so I'm sorry if you think some of us didn't want to speak to you, but I knew you were coming in, so we're facing you eye to eye. Look, appreciate your comments. I think everybody around this table would share your comments about it as falling unevenly and unfairly. You are aware, though, legally we have to, by legislation, revalue the city every 3 years, and unfortunately the perfect storm has fallen right at the top of revaluations, and that's something that we've had to do.
Fine, the system's broken.
Yeah.
It's not up to me to fix it, it's up to me to highlight the anger that's out there. Since that article appeared in the paper, you'd be surprised at the number of people who've contacted me or weren't aware of what percentage rates they were facing until I said, well, you go away and work it out. Most people just shrug their shoulders. And a lot of people aren't willing or are too frightened to come in here. It's quite intimidating.
Yep, I agree.
Appreciate. So I'm sort of like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I'm hearing you, and I think my colleagues are. Look, there are some e-bikes in the council, by the way, and they are getting used. And with the vehicles, we've already got some hybrids, and we do use the all-of-government purchasing. So I think the electric vehicle thing perhaps it's been taken a little bit out of context. But look, solution-wise, you're saying a flat, to spread it more fairly, is just a flat rate across the whole city.
Commercial and residential. I don't know. There's got to be a fairer system of land value than using land value.
Yeah, well, we're looking at that as well, because there is a, and Councillor Johnson's nodding away, there is a capital, there's a piece of work that's looking at what we could do to go to a capital rating system. So you can be assured that will get looked at fairly and quite promptly, but it's what we do in the meantime with the current issues we've got right at the moment.
Which is why I proposed an increase on the last year's rates of a rate of inflation or similar.
You're right, okay. All right, thank you.
I'll move then to a question from Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Malcolm, for coming in and talking to us, and for taking the time to give us some numbers as well, which I think is very helpful. I just wondered if you had a view on the proportion of rates paid by commercial versus residential. So one of the things that's happening as a result of valuations is about $10 million worth of rating that was paid by commercial is now proposed to be on the residential sector. And I didn't know if you had a view about whether or not we should be looking at that distribution.
No, I don't. I've only here as a ratepayer that's paid rates for 40 years in this city, you know, shrug my shoulders like most other people in the city when there's a rates increase, whatever it is. But this time it's different. So I don't have a view on the commercial side of things.
Okay, thank you.
Except that they pay their fair share.
Thank you. I'm sure we can agree on that.
Thank you, Malcolm. Your time is up now, but I believe you are going to read a letter on behalf of for Richard Wild, who is the next submitter. So
Yes, I am. He apologises for not being here. He's had to self-isolate at home. His wife has come down with COVID.
Right.
So he left this for me in his letterbox, and I haven't read it, so I'll just read it out as his mouthpiece.
Thank you.
And he says, the current rating method using land value rating is not fit for purpose. It is an example of bad economics because it does not reflect the costs of delivery of city services such as fresh water, wastewater, waste disposal, recycling and transport. The value of a particular parcel of land alone is not relevant to the costs of running the city in 2022. It is what occupies the land that better represents the costs to city services. Compare the cost to the city of an elderly couple living on a 1,000 square metre section, the old quarter acre, in the old family home and driving one small car, to a family of 2 parents and 2 or 3 teenagers living in a large new home with 2 bathrooms and covering 2/3 of a 750 square metre section and 2 or 3 vehicles. The obvious remedy to this problem is for the council to spread the rating burden far more widely and fairly by adopting capital value rating. This would spread the rating burden to the owners of the large, expensive properties who are currently sheltering behind their lower land values but much larger capital values. The proposed rate increases over parts of the city are far in excess of the 8% alleged average over the city. Data on the council website show proposed rate increases in older West End properties ranging from slightly less than 10% to more than 30%, whereas proposed rates for many owners in some of the newer, wealthier suburbs are either the same as or even less than they are currently paying. The other point I wish to make is that with the trend to infill with a greater number of smaller sections, often with larger houses, is that the area of impermeable surfaces, that's concrete and roofs, within the city will increase markedly and produce increased stormwater volumes with higher peak flows resulting from the forecast increase in number and severity of storm events owing to climate change. This will require upgrading the present stormwater system, particularly over older parts of the city, adding to future rate burdens that are presently unfairly shared amongst ratepayers. In addition, larger homes on smaller sections without much lawn area or shrubs or trees will become significantly hotter in the future with increasing climatic temperatures. This will increase energy demand for air conditioning to reduce the greater indoor temperatures and put pressure on infrastructure. The Mayor and councillors should show some concern for the lower income ratepayers, beneficiaries and others on fixed incomes living in older homes on larger sections and stop the proposed large rating increases on many properties. Change to capital value rating. It's a fairer system. Auckland, Hamilton, Wellington, Christchurch and Dunedin allocate their rates on capital value rating. Palmerston North is behind the times. That's Richard Wild, Cook Street, West End. He also he's quoted a couple of Oxford Dictionary definitions in this. He says the proposed rating system is prejudicial. On the one hand, it is biased against residents who choose to live on properties generally greater than 700 square metres. On the other hand, it is biased in favour of well-off residents living in large, expensive houses on slightly smaller sections. The budget allocates funds to various projects. The engine of the budget is the income which comes from rates. The current engine is driven by land values and is too small and misfiring. Its spark is retarded. It needs a complete overhaul, which hasn't been done for more than 50 years. Improve its performance with a complete overhaul. Change to capital value rating. It's a fairer system. He's also given me examples, as I've written down on a piece of paper, of different percentage increases from different properties around the city.
Thank you, Malcolm, for reading the letter from Richard Wild, and I hope his problems at home improve, and Council will respond to his concerns. So thank you very much for your submission and assisting Richard.
Thank you.
Our next submission is from the Palmerston North Youth Council. Kara Aspin, the Chair, and Lucas, the Treasurer. You understand the time frame for the submission, 10 minutes, 7 minutes the amber light, and red at 9. The floor is yours.
Kia ora, good afternoon. My name is Cara Aspden. I currently serve as the chairperson for the Palmerston North Youth Council.
Kia ora, my name is Lucas, and I'm the current treasurer for Palmerston North Youth Council and a Year 13 at Palmerston North Boys High School.
We are a council of currently 12 youth who exist to discuss and represent Palmerston North's diverse youth voice in local governance spaces. We share council matters with youth in a way that is accessible, understandable, and engaging, and we bring youth matters to council through workshops, consultations, and submissions such as this. From the time of our written submission, we've gone back to the youth and gathered their view on our points we raised, and we'd like to present them in support of what we've currently submitted. Through the Youth Council's presence on social media, we asked youth for their opinions on the areas we decided to focus on and had over 230 responses. This use of social media is so valuable in communicating with youth and vital in making council matters more accessible to everybody, especially our young people. We'd like to present their thoughts to you today. For today's submission, we'll be talking about 3 topics within the budget significant to the youth of Palmerston North: active transport, safe and connected communities, and Palmy as an eco-city. I'll now head on to oh, I won't. How's it looking? Good? Cool. So we decided to focus on active transport section of Goal 1 because youth use sidewalks and cycleways all the time on their way to and from school. As we stated in our submission, we believe steps to create a safer city go hand in hand with goals around active transport, especially for young people commuting to and from school. In the draft annual budget, we were pleased to see 14.63 of the proposed rates going towards active transport. As shown in our survey, we asked respondents how safe they felt commuting to and from school from a scale of 1 to 5, being very unsafe to very safe. As you can see by our response, which hopefully should be on the next slide. Cool. We had around 1.6 very unsafe, 3.7% unsafe, 6% neither safe nor unsafe, 50% safe, and 28% very safe. We are very pleased to see the relatively high amounts of active transport, especially walking, being used to get to school, and we hope to see a continued support of safety around schools to keep these figures high. We would also like to acknowledge the addition of e-scooters last year. And this environmentally friendly transport option is extremely popular with young people, and we appreciate the ongoing commitment to this forms of cleaner transport. Cool. That's all right. I'll now pass it on to Lucas.
Great, thanks, Cara. So the next point we're going to focus on in our submission is safe and connected communities. So in the draft annual budget, 6.52% of the proposed rates were going towards safe and connected communities. We feel this topic should be a priority for the City Council, especially because there's been a lot of attention and discussion with young people currently over the safety in Palmerston North. We believe the City Council needs to continue investing in safe and connected communities and not forget the importance investing in a safe city has on young people. Our concern is supported by our survey results where, when respondents were asked how safe they felt in the city from a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being very unsafe, 5 being very safe, 3% were very unsafe, almost 18% were unsafe, 40% were sort of in the middle, 35% safe, and only 5.2% were very safe. The most common reasons young people gave regarding their feelings of insecurity were problems such as crime, catcalling, smoking and vaping, intoxication in public, poor lighting, and reckless driving. It goes without saying that increasing the very safe percentage has to be a priority of the annual budget, and we believe this can be done by prioritizing safe and connected communities. Additionally, we strongly support schemes like the City Ambassadors and Youth Space to foster a stronger and safer sense of community. Overall, we believe all young people deserve to feel more safe in their own city, so City Council mustn't forget the importance of the proposed investment in safe and connected communities, and we hope this amount is not lowered. Okay, beyond safe and connected communities, it's well known that fighting environmental issues is one of the foremost challenges that young people face right now. So as you can see on the slides, we put together a selection of quotes from our survey, which show the importance of the environment to young people. And of course, the environment isn't just important to young people, but of course the City Council, because after all, a large part of last year's long-term plan contained an emphasis on Palmerston North becoming an eco-city. So we asked the Council not to forget this long-term goal while considering this year's annual budget. Because we believe creating an eco-city is a broad goal that can be tackled from a variety of angles, we would like the council to keep the environment at the forefront of all decisions made in the budget. We believe the potential environmental benefits or costs should be heavily considered in all fiscal, planning, or policy decisions related to this budget. We do acknowledge the proposed 2.09% of ratepayer dollars being spent in the budget's eco-city category, and we hope this percentage does not decrease. One other very important aspect of prioritizing an eco-city is ensuring young people are more engaged and proud of the work of their city council. We believe a budget sufficiently prioritizing environmental progress that young people can see in their communities physically will ultimately motivate young people themselves to continue to make the daily changes they can make to benefit the natural world. Young people are, of course, extremely engaged on many environmental issues, so continuing progress towards Palmerston North becoming an eco-city over the next year is vital to a successful budget. So that wraps up our points on safe and connected communities and Palmerston North as an eco-city. So I'll pass it back to our chair, Cara.
Well, yeah, I totally, it was so great what Lucas said, and I think he really summarized it in just the acknowledging of, in both active transport, eco-city, and safe and connected communities, just the value of consulting with Youth Voice and making sure they always have a seat at the table. Us as the Youth Council are only one arm, but the youth of Palmerston North are just so passionate about all the matters that relate to him, because everything that's discussed in Council relates to the future of the youth of Palmerston North. So in every arm of what we discuss, we just really hope to see that the youth will always be there, and that we're always here and ready to say what we want to see. Cool. So we're so grateful for your time today. I wondered if there was any questions that we could answer.
Well, thank you very much for your excellent investigative work you've conducted. Very impressive. I have a question from Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Cara and Lex, for coming in and presenting to us today. My question is really just around sort of the safety in the CBD. And I'm very pleased that you've actually brought, supporting data, I think, particularly around people's views for how safe they feel within the CBD. You mentioned the ambassador program and wanting to see that go forward. Can you give us perhaps just some understanding of some of the activities of the ambassadors that you felt were really helpful to make it safer?
Sure. So I thought one of the most important things, and this was mentioned on the survey, was just a presence, when you're walking around, especially at night. So it wasn't even, for a lot of people, it was actually just the absence of no one around them when they're walking at night. And although I think the city ambassadors might, of course they operate during certain hours, but I think just a large part that would be helpful is just having people that are sort of like on their side in the city center, if that makes sense.
Can you comment on sort of the level of engagement that the ambassadors undertook with, people that users of the CBD?
Yeah, so, obviously for some of this, it's great if you could consult with Youth Council later and, we'll gauge more opinions on this, but from what I heard, it sounded like they were much appreciated, the city ambassadors, so I guess engagement seemed good, yeah.
Speak on personal experience, the presence of the orange shirts operations and operations like that in the square really just helped, especially in the summer months where it's sunny and the square is so beautiful. It really helped, which is that more friendly, as Lucas talks about, the presence and the sort of the culture around the square. And I think personally, as somebody who's used the games and the beanbags and all the stuff that they offer and what they have around the square, it just really helps to create a sort of a space that's welcoming and a space that's, just a culture that really invites people to come in and to enjoy what the square has to offer.
Great. Thank you both, Mr. Chair.
Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought Councillor Hancock would take that safety question and just to further on that, you talked about the ambassadors. Central City CCTV cameras and that, would you like to see more of that or a better mode of that?
Yeah, so actually on the survey, I didn't mention it, but we did have a few people say a lack of CCTV cameras were part of why they felt unsafe. Yeah. So I think that would be great. Yeah.
Okay. And just, just on one more question, Mr. Chair, just around the the Eco City, and it's great that you put up quite a bit around Eco City. And I know you in your submission you state 2% as the pure Eco City budget. But have you seen our city's environmental sustainability report?
So part of when we looked at the annual draft budget, part of like the complex part for us was seeing a figure like 2.09% and thinking, okay, that looks low. But we do acknowledge that that's not all there is. So if we were going off that, like just off the bat, we would probably say, oh, it needs an increase. But we do know that like there's other stuff in place in the city that's environmentally focused. So our big thing is more just saying we think this should be a priority, and we think for all council decisions in the budget, it should be sort of like just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, because waters, transport, reserves, all of that probably
Active transport,
falls in other pockets, but it actually absolutely helps the Eco City strategy and goals. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, just
Thank you for the work you're doing too.
One final question from Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Cara and Lucas. Just a quick question around, you're probably aware we've brought e-scooters into the city. There's currently some age constraints around that and also some cost constraints around that. Do you have a view on what the age limit might better be set at for access to those services and how much that might contribute to the active transport space, especially around the school type activities?
I'll speak personally to my school sort of culture as Cornerstone in Calvin Grove. The e-scooter has actually been a really incredible addition to youth getting to school, youth getting around, youth getting to where they need to go. It's actually been really effective in youth that wouldn't have a ride or a way to get to places, having that sort of, way to take themselves to things. It's actually been really great. Personally, my only question around age limit around scooters would just simply be how enforceable it is, because most of these things are run by an app. And I wonder how it just, to properly answer your question, I wondered how an idea like that might be enforced.
If I can contribute, the specification is actually currently 18, and just wondered if there's a different age that you think would be more appropriate in terms of helping students access that opportunity.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I guess I would say sort of just like off the bat, I would say 16. But I think part of it is that there are a lot of people riding the scooters that are not 18 already. But I think lowering it is probably, great. And I think there are a lot of high schoolers maybe out there that would be using them, but because of the age restriction are not. So I guess 16 would be a good number.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair.
That concludes your submission. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your support team attending as well. You may roam the world in the future, but make sure you come back to Palmerston North. We want you.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Our next submitter is Rod Pike or Pick? How do you? Pick. Supported by Vanja Pavano. You understand the actual system, that you have 10 minutes to make your submission. At 7 minutes, the amber light will go on. At 9 minutes, the red light goes on. And 10 minutes, it should be all over. The floor is yours.
Just wondering what kind of control do we have over the PowerPoint presentation? Kia ora. My name is Rod Pick, and I'm here with my friend Vanja Pavano to speak to the petition calling the council to make Vogel Street safer. I've come to work as a psychiatrist in hospital here, moving to Palme with my wife May and our son Leo in August last year. Hi, May and Leo. Over the past 5 years, we traveled up and down the country looking for the perfect place to settle and found charming little Palmerston North just right for us. We bought a house in Roslyn and I thought, great, I can cycle to hospital, we can walk to Vanya's, walk the dog to Pick Park and cycle to the river together. It's the kind of lifestyle we wanted and that the council seems to support for reasons like health, emissions and sustainability. But we soon realized it wasn't going to be that simple. The streets and roads around us, and Vogel Street in particular, were simply too unsafe to cross or to cycle. It's an urban residential street, but looks more like an industrial bypass. Why should that be? Vanya's family and mine spoke to neighbors and friends, reached out to council, and learned that other than a plan to raise the already existing single pedestrian crossing, there were no plans to improve Vogel Street safety. We thought, this is a joke. A single pedestrian crossing at the very end of a 1.7 kilometer residential street. I mean, there are school children using the street all the time. We knew we weren't the only ones who were concerned, so we started a petition. May designed a flyer, and with Leo and myself, we put it in post boxes in Vogel Street. We thought a few dozen local residents would probably sign. As of this morning, there were 591 signatures. People wrote things like, the street is so busy, vehicles don't even notice children around. I cycle along Vogel Street regularly with 2 8-year-olds. Please keep our community safe. I have grandchildren who have to cross from Rangiora and Vogel Street and have to guess at what speed cars, trucks and motorbikes are traveling. People we met in the street, without exception, shared our concerns and thanked us for the petition. So I think I can say with confidence we are speaking for the local community here today. Palmerston North is overall such a livable city. Let's make sure Roslyn is no exception. Vogel Street needs to be made safer for everyone. Thank you. I'll let Vanya take it from here.
Kia ora tātou. My name is Vanya Pavano. I've lived in Palmerston North for 20 years, the last 5 of them on Vogel Street, and it's my job just to provide a few details and facts around our concerns. As Rod said, we've been talking to neighbours. I was talking to my neighbour Miriam Starnes, who has lived on Vogel Street for something like 64 years, and she said she's noticed a significant increase, rather a sudden increase in the traffic, and in the number of trucks just over the last 5 years. Last Friday lunchtime, just as a random hour, she sat and counted the vehicles, and she came to 368 vehicles in 1 hour. Last week, I also happened to have COVID, so I had plenty of, and 18 of those, Miriam said, were large trucks. I happened to have COVID, so I had plenty of time to sit masked and socially distanced by the side of the road on my little chair and count trucks. Her estimate of 18 large trucks per hour is about right. I did 4 separate sessions, 18 to 20 trucks per hour on a narrow residential street. This has made Vogel Street unsafe for all road users. First of all, Vogel Street's unsafe for motorists. The traffic is heavy and it's fast. There are long queues, particularly at the intersection of Featherston and Vogel Street, which leads to risky decision-making by motorists. And Rod and May snapped this one. We get some very interesting overtaking at that intersection, some very risky behaviour. Secondly, Vogel Street's unsafe for pedestrians. As Rod pointed out, there's only 1 pedestrian crossing in the whole of 1.7 kilometres of road. This is a particular concern because there's lots of schools nearby and children use it as their main route to school. Thirdly, Vogel Street is unsafe for cyclists. My family and I choose to cycle as our preferred mode of transport for all the reasons that Palmerston North City Council supports cycling and active transport, for budget, for health, for emissions, and for easy parking. However, I'm concerned about the safety of my teens on their bicycles, and the 10-year-old has stopped cycling altogether because of my safety concerns. As well as the traffic being fast and heavy, there's lots of them. Potholes cause traffic to swerve, which also poses a risk for cyclists. The road is narrow and there's often parked cars on both sides of the street. And as you can see in this photo, even with cars only on one side of the street, there's actually no room for bicycles, which creates pinch points and creates significant hazards for cyclists. Lastly, Vogel Street's unsafe for its residents. For those of us who live on Vogel Street, air quality and noise pollution are daily concerns. Noise is of course not helped by the potholes, which cause the trucks to bump loudly through them. Heavy traffic creates hazards for young families, and I daily fear for my young neighbours who play on the footpath adjacent to all this horrible traffic. Elderly residents too, slow crossing the road. There's Abbeyfield on Vogel Street. I wonder how its residents get on. And we're concerned with the new freight hub going in along Railway Road, and that as it is constructed and as it then is completed and becomes functional, that the volume of traffic, both large and small vehicles, will only increase. So we say the time for action is now, and we urge Palmerston North City Council to make Vogel Street an urgent priority. We need road markings that slow traffic. We need limits on on-street car parking. We need a bypass route for trucks. We need controlled intersections, particularly the intersection of Featherston versus Vogel Street is a real risk. We need safe places for pedestrians to cross. We need cycle lanes. And that's a tree on Vogel Street across the road from my house, and I just thought it was a nice way to end. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you today.
Thank you for your submission. I believe we have a question from His Worship the Mayor.
Kia ora, thanks for coming in. Appreciate you taking the time. I've seen a little bit in the media and obviously online as well, so well done for getting it in front of us. Vogel Street, I understand, and it's good that we've got the our lead infrastructure officer here who's hearing it all too. So I do understand that Vogel Street is due for some major work. You'd like to see obviously some traffic calming, another pedestrian crossing, more up the Hayden Street, the Featherston Street end. Is that probably right?
I think, as we said, this could be one of the solutions. Again, from what we heard in terms of safety, the only change that is planned is to upgrade the existing pedestrian crossing. So we would urge council not to focus particularly or only on resurfacing the road, because that previously has been the focus.
Yeah.
It's a whole, maybe it's for the city traffic engineers to kind of examine the road and think what kind of safety arrangement can be made there.
Yeah, and thank you for some sort of solutions. Look, Vogel Street's not designed, it's not suitable for trucks. And you're totally right about the trucks. I've got friends there and there's just so many trucks. But actually, the bypass is the regional freight ring road, and that is where the trucks should be going, and that is the bypass, and the industrial park actually ensures that happens if that all goes ahead. So, just want your comments on that, really.
If I may, the main road to Railway Road seems to be Vogel Street. That's how people get there.
That's currently how they get there, but that's not where they'll be going in the future. Yeah. So it'll be around the city rather than through the city. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair.
Question from Councillor Brent Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Rod and Vanya, for speaking to your concerns and the concerns of several hundred signatories. You spoke, Rod, about being a bit surprised about, rather than getting a dozen or two signatures, that you saw hundreds of signatures come. I wondered if through the comments and kind of interactions that you've had, has it kind of changed the scope in terms of what concerns or solutions you were thinking about?
I guess people's questions mainly made me think about potential solutions and what actually needs to be changed. So we were generally concerned that the road was unsafe, but people kept asking us, so what do you propose? So what needs to change? And I think hence some of the suggestions we make here. But as I said, I think maybe we should let professionals review the road and say what needs to be done safety-wise.
Thanks, and if I can follow up as well, I think, Vanya, you spoke at the end with some sense of urgency, but can you just give us a very clear, I guess, view around that, given that sometimes things do get shuffled into prioritization queues? Could you help us understand your view and the signatories' views around urgency?
I'm very encouraged to hear that a bypass is coming, but I think that may not be enough. I think the Featherston-Vogel Street intersection needs addressing regardless. And from my very lay inexpert perspective, I can see traffic lights there with a button for pedestrians that would solve a lot of problems, and incorporating Hayden Street in that as well, because it's a tricky intersection. But, you know, as Rod said, it's not for us to tell roading engineers what to do. We present the problems, and we can see significant problems.
Thank you both. Mr. Chair.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation and your petition. I just wanted to understand if you would be open to expanding the scope, just to give comment of experiences crossing Main Street coming out of Vogel Street with the right-hand turn, because I know that's been an issue in the past being mentioned. Did you want to give comment on that?
So this is an issue that was raised from the outset when we started to discuss safety issues travelling Vogel Street into the city. However, because Napier Road, decision about Napier Road, we were made to understand are not the remit of the council, but of Whakakawhai. So then we decided to focus here on Vogel Street. But obviously, right turning from Vogel to Main Street is a hazard. I personally tend to avoid it. There's accidents happening in the area quite regularly as well.
Thank you very much. Well, that concludes your submission, Rod and Vanya. Thank you very much indeed, and hopefully we'll have some solutions for you in the future, in the near future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next submission is from Marsha Alico. Probably need to
You have to press that one. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'll just sort of advise you in terms of the actual, we have 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And the light will go amber at 7 minutes, and it will go red at 9 minutes.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, could we just get a refresh on submission number as well?
On submission number, it's 181.
Thank you.
It's moved from session 3. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. By the way, again, I'm Marsha. I've actually moved to Palmerston North 4 years ago, and I'm one of the people that has, I guess I consider myself young, and I bought a place here in Palmerston North and decided to actually settle here for good, and I'm from Auckland. I got a job at Finterra Research 4 years ago, and I thought maybe this is the time to settle and have a career and find a place where I could progress as a person. Along with me is my stepdad, who helped me out throughout my career. So I guess my question is, being a young person, and I've obviously have just got a limited source of income, and any increase in tax is actually not good for my budget. I guess I don't know how many people have already asked this question, but in terms of recent increase in rates, I guess my question is it really necessary that we have to increase our rates now that we're in the middle of unprecedented times, or are there any plans to actually hold up to other plans, and can maybe once we're already moved on from this inflation as well, maybe we could proceed to those, I would say, other plans. You know what I mean? So because we are in limited, well, I consider myself what I have when my income is, and considering the expenses, the current recent increase in prices, plus obviously the rates, is it really a good time to do some of the projects, or can we hold on to it so that our taxes, our rates would not increase that much? I guess my primary question is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Marsha, for coming in to talk to us. Just in terms of your rate for your property, can you tell us what percentage increase you're actually experiencing?
That I actually can't remember, but from my top of my head, it was 8.3 or 8%.
Okay, 8.3% is the proposed rate increase.
Yeah.
But there is the property revaluations which may have either increased or decreased that. So.
Okay,
have you done the calculation on the City Council website?
I have to be honest, not, but my house price would have increased, doubled too. So whatever. So yeah.
We'll look it up. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Marsha. I just wanted to ask some questions about some of the comments you made in your submission about stop giving free stuff, teach people to work, only give free support to people who are willing to do work. Yep. Can you just expand on that? What free stuff is it that you think we should stop doing?
I think that I must admit, because I was actually in an emotional state that time when I've submitted that submission, but I guess social work and social. How do you describe that? Yes. I guess in general, just free. I can't say the exact words, but I guess the unnecessary free social benefits, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm struggling to understand what you're referring to there. So as council, we're not giving social benefits. That's coming through the Ministry of Social Development. So I wondered if you had some examples of the things that you were referring to there, because you made some general statements.
Yeah, but I must admit, it was more of a general statement than a specific one.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Marsha. I'm also was just interested in some of the statements you've made in your submission as well. In particular, you've said stop building stuff because not everyone is using it. And I'm just wondering if you've got any specific examples of things that you think we shouldn't be putting money into building.
Yeah, I guess one of the things, I know it's necessary for I suppose for community to build or to do social housing for people, but I guess in the middle of the pandemic, is it really the focus?
Okay.
I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brent Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Marsha, for speaking to your submission. Just wanted to pick up on the point that you've made at the beginning around fairly recently choosing to make Palmerston North your home. Can you just give us a brief sense of what attracted you to Palmerston North and kind of the things that you do like about the city. And the reason I'm asking is that might help us prioritize our thinking about some of the decisions that we have coming up.
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes, definitely. Well, as a quick background, I came from Philippines, and my stepdad brought us here along with my family. But we originally started in Auckland, and I've finished a degree in Auckland, and I guess it's the buzz of the city that I wasn't really keen to. I can't imagine my life to live. Like, for example, to get from A to B, it takes time, right? Congestion is always a problem in any city, really. And I thought I would like to see myself and the rest, I guess, the future of myself to be in a city where, it's easy access to everything. Palmerston North is actually the best place because it is a city, you get everything that you need, and if you need more, then it's easy access to Wellington or to fly to Auckland. And you've got university, you've got work. I guess I earn, I would say, okay, but if I compared the difficulty and I guess the more, I can't buy a house in Auckland, if that makes any sense. So, and here I was able to do that 4 or 5 years ago. So, yeah, affordability, I think, is the better word.
Thanks. That's a really helpful answer for us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There being no further questions, thank you very much for your submission, Marsha. And that concludes the session of submitters. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
That concludes our Committee of Council session today. However, before we conclude, we have an additional recommendation to take. It'll come up on the screen shortly. That the committee resolved to note the procedure for hearing of submissions. That's the wrong one. Yes, wrong one. Here it is. The committee resolved that Councillor Renee Dingwall be agreed to be the chair on Friday the 13th of May from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. session. You moving that? Right, we have a seconder, Councillor Hancock. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank Carly, the administrator, and Sarah, our advisor, and Sarah Sinclair, who's got all the actual work now ahead of her as to what she's heard this evening. And thank you very much for your patience and time. And I believe you've all been advised that this evening's session is not on. Thank you very much. What's that? Yeah.